Band-Aid, and why we should not tolerate white middle-class stupidity. First published on the 19th of November 2014. So, as we are all aware by now, Bob Geldof and his band of merry men are at it again with the recently released Band-Aid 30 single, Do They Know It's Christmas? Ebola remix. While the justified outrage will no doubt continue, I really had to sit down and consider this thing from a different angle in order to know how to respond to it. It could well be that for the most part we are dealing with the kind of upper middle class white arrogance that breeds a special kind of stupidity. A special kind of stupidity that doesn't require you to know that Ethiopia, for example, is one of the oldest Christian nations on the planet, and therefore, famine or no famine, its people would have been very well aware that it was Christmas 30 years ago, even if they celebrate it in January instead of December. It could well be that this same arrogance means that Bob and his band are not aware of the fact that thousands of Africans in the diaspora travel back to places like Ghana every year, specifically for the Christmas period. It could well be that, but I personally find it hard to believe that with 30 years of the world becoming more and more connected via communication technology, amidst an era rife with talk of Africa supposedly containing the world's most fastest growing economies, and all the money spent on PR in the entertainment industry, that no one among the hundreds of people involved in this effort had the sense to raise a flag about the ridiculous nature of the lyrics and the thoroughly outdated image they project about an entire continent and its people. Indeed, we could all jump on the defensive, brandishing images of skyscrapers and motorways in Abuja, Nairobi and Johannesburg, complete with proof that Africa very well does know that it is Christmas time. But we should ask ourselves, why should we have to? In many ways, doing so only lends itself to reinforcing the eurocentric ideals explicit in the Band-Aid tribute. The very question, do they know it's Christmas, is designed to promote the idea that Europe and the culture of Europeans is the axis upon which the world turns. Therefore, in order to be happy, developed and civilized, Africa must have what Europe has. Look how Europe looks and celebrate what Europeans celebrate. But why not flip the script? Why not ask Europe if they know it's Homoa, Irigi, Inkwala, Eje, Nkosi, or any number of the harvest festivals indigenous to the African continent? Why not ask that question and promote the joys and wonders of living in a tropical environment where food grows on trees rather than having to rely on buying food in a supermarket? Or why are we not able to say, no, but we do know of the Pan-African celebration of Kwanzaa, specifically designed to reconnect us with those African festivals after many of us lost them as a result of British slavery and colonization, during which we were only forced to celebrate Christmas. And after that, how about we gather a whole bunch of Afrobeat artists to bemoan the lack of fertile soil and sunshine in Britain, highlighting the fact that 1 in every 4 children in Britain are said to be living in poverty. The point being that Western values and cultural ideals need not be the stick by which African well-being and happiness is measured on any level. Therefore, Africans need not know it's Christmas at all, and certainly don't need Western acts of charity in order to bring it to us. On a broader scale, however, the fact is that the Band-Aid lyrics are a pop music rendition of the song that the Western media has been composing and performing for the last 4 months. An elaborate symphony in which a disease affecting 3 nations becomes an epidemic affecting the entirety of West Africa, or Africa as a whole in some projections. Complete with a choir singing the most beautiful harmonies of disease-ravaged Africans hands, incapable of lending a kiss or shake a hand, let alone healing a sickness. Despite the fact that thousands of doctors across Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Benin are doing exactly that. If Ebola is what they say it is no doubt a horrible disease that must be tackled. But proportionally speaking, the flu is a greater threat to the lives of people in the UK and the USA than Ebola is to Africa. And those who compose this symphony are very well aware of this, which suggests that there is certainly an agenda behind the promotion of this crisis at this time. So, as fellow #Team TBB journalist Kungadred recently asked in a conversation, it's all well and good complaining, but what are we going to do about it? Well, here are my humble suggestions in answering that question. Get informed. There are a number of upcoming events exploring Ebola from an African perspective. We shall ensure that TBB keeps its finger on the pulse in order to inform readers. Some organizations are the Institute of African Wellness, the Interim National African People's Parliament, Elbow Out Ebola, and others, and will explore the crisis from medical as well as political and economic perspectives. It is important to keep an open mind while being informed. Take for example the fact that the USA has pledged at least 4,000 military troops to West Africa to fight Ebola, significantly more than were initially sent to Iraq to fight Islamic State militants, supposedly hell-bent on destroying America. The number of actual doctors it has sent pales in comparison. Serious questions must be asked about the intentions of the US involvement, therefore, and Liberian Dr. Cyril Broderick is doing just that. To quote from his article, Ebola, AIDS, manufactured by Western Pharmaceuticals, USDOD, quote, the World Health Organization and several other UN agencies have been implicated in selecting and enticing African countries to participate in the testing events, promoting vaccinations, but pursuing various testing regimens. The ravages of a disease on a nation are often more to do with the ability to treat it than the nature of the disease itself. Therefore, this is as much about the political and economic conditions as it is about a medical crisis. The trick is to drum up so much fear that the idea of Western, we need to take action now, assistance appears to be the only logical solution, and that is a perception that needs to be challenged. Boycott the Band-Aid single. Not only for the stupidity of the lyrics, but for the farce of British charity that it promotes, and the disrespect that it shows to African humanity. A note of appreciation to Fuse ODG for declining the offer to take part in Band-Aid 30. Thank you for the example you set. Get involved. We live in a world that promotes charity over activism. This is because charity maintains the present status quo. Ever wondered why, with all the billions given to charities over the past 30 years, the problems they purport to be solving remain the same and worsen? It's because charity is designed to present the illusion of addressing an issue while imprisoning people in ongoing crisis management. Activism instead challenges the status quo. It is designed to address not just the crisis, but the context in which the crisis is created. As PhD student Robtel Nejai Paley brilliantly pointed out on BBC Sunday Morning Live, if Britain wants to help Africa, it needs to change its policies towards Africa.
Band-Aid is just that. It's an apt phrase in the sense that it puts short fixes on structural changes that need to take place. So if we really want to assist, then change the WTO trade rules that adversely affect the continent, change the neoliberal policies of the World Bank and the IMF that adversely impact the continent in terms of its economic makeup. I think those are the structural changes that need to take place, not a song that's going to raise money. And we don't even know where the money is going,
Okay.
first of all.
There is an imbalance between the people who are coming west and being treated and the people who are in Africa and receiving
No, it's not Africa. It's Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. That's the first thing.
Are they not in Africa?
Yes, but Africa is a 54-country continent. It's not a monolith.
So you don't care about those countries that are
I'm
suffering
Liberian.
right now?
Of course I care about those countries.
And what
of course
would you
I
like
care about my family.
me to do? What would you like
I would
me
like
to
you
do?
to advocate for structural changes.
So go out there with a poster.
Precisely.
And not
Precisely.
pay money.
Change the policies of the UK government. That is how you
Not
make a change
send
in
a
terms
clinic,
of...
not send doctors,
Countries
not
are-
send nurses.
Liberians, Guineans, and Sierra Leones are already doing that. Liberians, Guineans, and Sierra Leones in the UK are doing that.
Although the scope of the discussion and the arrogance of some of the other guests did not allow her to expand on this point, it was the most essential contribution made to the debate. Clearly, for Britons like Esther Rantzin, it is much more palatable to portray poor, helpless, diseased Africans than it is to speak the truth about multinational corporations and Western governments. This is the reality that must be addressed. There is no such thing as poverty in Africa. There is only impoverishment. Conditions created by Western nations and their institutions that in turn retard African nations' ability to manage its own welfare. Take the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, for example, who collaborate in imposing loans tied to structural adjustment programs. Though the programs are said to improve the economies of the nations, this supposed improvement comes at the expense of the nation's ability to develop its own infrastructure in farming and pharmaceuticals, to name but two areas. In doing so, when crises such as Ebola come around, the nation is ill-equipped to manage it, and therefore Western help is needed. The GDP may increase, but this has little to no effect on the living conditions of the people. Take as another related example the absurd situation in which, after centuries of having the human and material wealth of Africa all but sucked dry in order to make the superpowers of America and Europe, today we have what is known as third world debt, where the national budget cannot serve the needs of the people because the government remains indebted to repay high interest loans to the West. These are ongoing issues that need to be addressed consistently, because you don't solve problems by addressing crisis. You solve problems by changing conditions. So in order to help the people, we must change the economic relationship between Britain and Africa. We must not just cancel, but repudiate third world debt as a criminal and unjust act. As many people who know about Ebola need to know about the IMF, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, and their policies in relation to Africa. Seeing as we are talking music here, it would be a good idea if black UK artists did like Tikenja, Amadou and Miriam, Salif Keita, Omu Sangare, as well as people like Sizzla, and gather to do a song. No need to name drop here, but how powerful would it be if grime, Afrobeats, hip-hop, reggae and soul artists from the UK collaborate to counter the propaganda of Band-Aid, highlighting the issues outlined above, and encourage people to buy the song in order to help fund not just charities but activist organizations, especially those on the ground in Africa who are challenging the ongoing injustices on a daily basis, doing their best to help and serve the people against innumerable odds, so that the crises and injustices truly cease to continue. Just a thought I'm putting out there.